conservatives make better parents than liberals?
How's your mental health these days? Well, that might depend on how conservative your parents are. A new report from our next guest, Jonathan Rothwell, indicates that on a number of vectors, conservative parents perform better with their children than their liberal counterparts.
Let's go. That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
Leading to better mental health results for their kids. Rothwell writes, parental political ideology is a strong predictor of parenting style. Liberal parents had the lowest scores, meaning they were the least likely to endorse items indicating warm, disciplined parenting. Just 40% of liberal parents scored above average on the index, whereas 71% of very conservative parents and 56% of conservative parents did.
Got him! Got him!
As with parenting practices, political ideology and attitudes towards marriage are also strongly predictive of parent-child relationships. Very conservative parents, on average, enjoy the strongest relationships with their adolescent children, and liberals experience the worst. The difference is large and statistically significant at 95% confidence levels. Conservative parents are 8 percentage points more likely to be in a good relationship with their adolescent child than liberal parents, and the gap is 14 percentage points between very conservative and liberal parents.
Oh my God! Wow!
I'm gonna go ahead and just say, I truly believe that the reason why conservative parents tend to fare higher, honestly say it has to do with the Christian background. I believe that those that subscribe to a Christian worldview have vision, a more positive and transcendent vision for their children's lives. I believe they care more about the moral upbringing of the child, allowing them to be more selfless. And these are all principles that come from Christ himself. As it says in scripture, if you spare the rod, you'll spoil the child. I believe there's more discipline and more structure for children to correct bad behavior and reward good behavior. Obviously, a lot of studies have shown that children respond well to structured environments where there is a reward incentive. Those tend to be the best possible environments to raise a child in. It's the Christian worldview that encourages that. I would also go as far as saying, I tend to notice more, this is just personal anecdotes from more liberal parents, where you tend to see they want to try to be the friend. You'll hear things like, it's not my job to do A, B, or C. I just want to raise you to be a responsible adult that just doesn't hurt anyone else. Although this may sound good on the surface, that's as low of a bar as you can set for your child. It's not enough to just say, I just want to raise you, it's not my job. It is your job. Every aspect of your life is your job. It's up to you to cultivate them to be the best human being that they can be that resembles Jesus Christ. You don't have time to give up on any single area of their life. For you to say it's not my job to handle this area, basically what you're saying is, it's not my job, but somebody else is going to fill in that position and handle that job for you. Whether it's the school system, it's the government in general, including spiritual influences. If you don't handle a specific area in the life of a child, the world will do it for you. And it's tend to be, it just, again, that's personal anecdotes where I see liberal parents always trying to play the friend card and just allow them just to be happy. It's just about happiness. Happiness is fleeting. In fact, I truly believe that the true reward for friendship with your child is raising them up well. If you raise them up to be like Christ, if you play your role of being a parent in the easy seasons in life and the hard seasons in life, if you do the easy things and you do the hard things in their life necessary to make them a better human being, your reward will be a friendship with the child in the end. But to try to dismiss that and try to play friendly and nice and it's about happiness, kumbaya, that's only going to destroy the child. But let's go ahead and proceed.
That adolescents with very conservative parents are 16 to 17 percentage points more likely to be in good or excellent mental health compared to their peers with very liberal parents. Only 55% of adolescents of liberal parents reported good or excellent mental health compared to 77% of those with conservative or very conservative parents.
Here now to discuss his findings is principal economist with Gallup, Jonathan Rothwell. Welcome to Rising. Thanks for joining us. Let's start by breaking down why exactly this might be. You point out that conservative parents are more likely to adopt what has previously been referred to as an authoritative parenting style. First, what is an authoritative parenting style, and why do you think it is conservative parents, and very conservative parents in particular, that might be more likely to take on that style?
Well, the style is characterized by demandingness and warmth or responsiveness. Those are the two dimensions. Demandingness or lack of demandingness is one dimension, the other is warmth or coldness. And this style was developed in the psychology research literature by Diana Baumrind, Eleanor Maccoby, and other psychologists in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's been documented through hundreds of studies since that this style is highly predictive of depression, anxiety, and other forms of mental illness. And the optimal style is called authoritative by Baumrind, and that combines the expectations and high demands that a parent brings when he or she disciplines and enforces rules and regulations with the warmth and responsiveness that comes with child-centeredness.
So, if I were to explore some kind of relationship between sunburns and human behavior, I could find in the data, if I conducted research, that it seems that everyone who ate ice cream one day ended up having a sunburn. And then I concluded that maybe eating ice cream causes sunburns. I would be overlooking the fact that people tend to eat ice cream when they're outside in the sun enjoying a warm day, and it's actually the sun that causes sunburns.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
What, if any, confounding variables did you look into in the research here that conservatives may be more likely to not report when they're experiencing mental health problems, that it's a part of the culture?
She's trying to say that you basically drew a conclusion out of two things that have no necessary correlation. That's why she gave that corny one-dimensional illustration that she did. My man is citing his sources. He's providing all the data necessary. He allowed you to see the paradigm in which they came to the conclusion. It was based on a metric that was provided, he said, and he cited the psychologists from the 50s through 70s based on warmth and coldness, and of course, demandingness versus, and then the degree of demand versus no demand. So the paradigm is laid out for us, and he's letting us know where liberal parents, where conservative parents, and where very conservative parents landed in the spectrum that was provided. And again, she's going to argue false equivalency, but let's go ahead and continue.
Sure. To either not recognize mental health problems as real or to sort of mask them to seem strong. What variables did you look into other than parenting style that could explain this correlation with conservative parents and high reported mental health status?
Great question. So quite a few is the short answer. We looked at education, household income, race, ethnicity, the sex of the parent, the sex of the child, the age of the child, subjective reports of how comfortable their standard of living is from the parent's perspective. We also looked at mental health measured by what the youth reports versus what the parent reports, and found that they were well aligned. And I'd also say that we're not the first to identify the relationship between liberal adolescence and mental health problems. This has been something that the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt has written a lot about recently. And of course, many psychologists have documented the alarming rise in suicide, depression, and other mental health problems that we've seen over the last 10 years among adolescents in the United States.
Again, she started off by saying, maybe it's a false equivalency. You're creating correlation where there seems to be none that exists. What other metrics did you use to provide the answer? He gave you all the information just now. She also asserted the idea that maybe it's because you neglected to include mental health in your survey. He provided all the information as well. So that's step one. That's the first phase. He's able to successfully combat their responses, and let's see how this conversation continues.
My understanding, Jonathan, that while conservatives might be less likely to seek treatment for things like mild depression or mild emotional disorders, they're actually more likely to seek treatment for severe depressive disorder or severe anxiety. Is that accurate?
You're a victim.
I can't say that I've come across that literature, and we weren't really looking into that in a great deal of depth for this report, but I can tell you that in addition to the subjective items where the parents are describing mental illness symptoms of their children, and the children are reporting their level of well-being. We also documented that those subjective measures are highly correlated with whether or not the child is currently receiving psychiatric medication and the probability that the child has recently visited a doctor to discuss psychological problems.
So I'm curious, were urban and rural areas also considered in the confounding variables list? I don't know if I remember you saying it. I can imagine a world where, we see a correlation currently in the data and voter trends of participation in Republican primaries and voting more conservative in rural areas, and also oftentimes an increase in actually mental health issues in conservative areas. A lot of these, towns, small towns across America have been left behind by a lot of industries for, this sort of urban sprawl. We've seen this trend to be in more urban areas. Likewise, we see a trend for urban areas to be more liberal, but I can definitely recognize that living in a, urban versus rural area could contribute to a child's mental health.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Good Lord, that's just word vomiting at this point. Like, keep it simple. Keep it to 1 to 3 sentences if you want to ask a question. So, of course, now we've gone from the false equivalency to now it's, why didn't you do more? Why didn't you include more categories? Yeah, you did well, but more. And if you didn't do more, then now it's, let's throw it away because it wasn't enough. That's what they're trying to argue now. First and foremost, to conduct these kind of academic studies is very expensive. That's number one. It's not cheap conducting these studies because you have to survey so many people over a sustained amount of time. Sometimes studies can be short, they're short term, like a year or less. Sometimes they're mid or long term. Some studies can go as far as a decade or longer, or sometimes over the course of the lives of certain individuals, of the sample size. But to just say, do more, I see that you didn't do more, why didn't you do more? That's her argument right now. And we have to be able to filter through the nonsense and what they're spewing. All I can say is that what he's done thus far is a great foundation in terms of parenting style based on political ideology. We're going to continue to see more universities probably borrow from his research and try to expand upon it. There'll be a majority of universities will want to knock it down and disprove it and poke holes in it. And then there'll be certain ones that will try to be like, you know what, let's go ahead and branch off of this. Let's see what else we can get from this. What other information? But let's go ahead and continue.
Divide it all in the research or find any trends there?
We didn't have quite enough sample, I'd say, to look in great depth in rural versus urban, depending on how you define it. There didn't seem to be any large differences by educational attainment, socioeconomic status, though, surprisingly. So other work, notably by Ann Case and Angus Deaton, two Princeton economists, have found that deaths of despair have increased quite a bit among less educated white Americans who tend to live in rural areas. Lately, though, there's been some convergence, as they themselves have noted, and that other communities are starting to see rising deaths from alcohol use, drug use, accidental overdoses, and suicide, even in many urban areas. So it seems like that may have first sort of spiked in rural areas, but is now very much an urban problem too. And that applies to adults who are middle-aged. These trends that we're seeing are, in terms of mental health decline, are concentrated in adolescence, in terms of rising depressive symptoms of depression and anxiety. And I think it's well established that is happening very much in urban areas as well.
Your study also looked into the potential negative effects of what you call adverse effects on the mental health of adolescents. Can you walk us through what some of those adverse effects you looked at were, and how much can a good parenting style mitigate those negative effects?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So, of course, losing a parent to death, or having a parent move out of the house because he or she has been imprisoned, or through a divorce that may have gone very badly and that parent is no longer considered part of the family or household, can be traumatic for the child. Feeling rejected or abandoned by a parental figure could be traumatic for the child. Those are some of the things we asked about, in addition to how safe they feel on a 5-point scale. And those sorts of questions come from measures that were developed by the CDC and fielded on some of their surveys, and they are correlated, as you would expect, with the adolescent's mental health. And so avoiding those is important. But what we do find is that the overall quality of the relationship with the parent is far more important. So, and this is the parent who's reporting on the survey, not necessarily all of the parents that are in the child's life. But a strong relationship with that parent has a bigger effect on their mental health than those kind of self-reports of losing a parent or feeling rejected by another parent.
Well, all in all, obviously we see what we have here. It's just very low level dismissal of the research findings. I don't think they're necessarily the right ones to have throughout this interview. They didn't ask any questions you could say that were necessarily jarring or compelling. As of now, I'll say his research stands. That was a very low level attempt of trying to shake the foundation. But I think this is great progress in terms of parenting and how political ideology plays a part. I do believe liberalism has gone way too far, to the point where it's now self-defeating. It's absolutely toxic at this point. And we need more conservative households. We need to see the family nucleus restored in our country. That's the only thing that will strengthen our country once again. Liberals are not having children. Conservatives are. Conservatives still believe in traditional family roles. Conservatives still believe in having children. So by default, liberalism is going to basically cut itself out the picture because they're not reproducing. Liberals don't have children. Like we've heard the term DINKS, the dual income, no kids or no children, however you want to say it. Liberals don't want to have kids, so within a generation, they will be the minority. Conservatives believe in having children still. They're the ones that are propping up society and still doing their part in making babies. But again, I can't wait to continue to follow this study and see how it continues to expand. Hopefully they get some grants, more research money. But with that being said, you guys let me know your comments down below. Do you think political ideology plays a part in how we raise our children? And also whether or not we have children. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Deuces.